started playing Magic in 2004, but I really didn't start collecting cards until 2012. My first box was for Core 2013, which was a set that came out after introducing a new and exciting plane to the world of Magic, Innistrad. The classical horror atmosphere and beautiful artwork made this one of my favorite planes, and honestly, it still is in my top 5. Unfortunately, while I was doing research on this block, I discovered that out of all 3 sets, Innistrad, Dark Ascension, and Avacyn Restored, there were only 7 new mechanics introduced. I could have sworn there were more, but I guess not. Anyway, this is my rankings for all the mechanics that are found in original Innistrad block. Hope you enjoy. Anyway, I should start with the most obvious mechanic that was introduced in this set. See, every pack from these 3 sets included one of these checklist cards. These acted as a placeholder for the cards in the set that had the ability to transform. Cards that had the transform mechanic were double-sided, hence the purpose of the checklist card. They would enter on one side, but then later had the ability to flip to the other side, oftentimes to a much more powerful card. The trigger for transformation varies from card to card. The werewolves in this set made this their primary mechanic. If no one casts a spell by the end of a turn, they transform into their werewolf form. Delver Secrets, on the other hand, requires an instant or sorcery to be at the top of your library at the beginning of your turn in order to transform. Others, like Bloodline Keeper, you just have to pay a mana cost and fulfill a certain requirement in order to transform it into, in this case, Lord of Lineage. Now, it should be noted that the werewolves from this set and the next don't have the new mechanic Daybreak, so they don't trigger that way. In addition, I should mention that only the first 2 sets, Innistrad and Dark Ascension, were the only ones in this set to include transformed cards. This mechanic as a whole is honestly pretty cool, and they trigger in a variety of different ways. I like that. Overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. The first actual mechanic that was put onto a card outside of transformation was Morbid. Yes, that's the actual name of the mechanic, not me being dark. Morbid is an additional effect that has a pretty simple trigger. Something just has to die. I don't mean leaves the battlefield, I mean takes enough damage to put it into the graveyard or an actual kill spell. I honestly learned that last one the hard way. Vashta Narada, a Doctor Who card, is hard to stop and harder to kill. Plus, it gets better every time something dies. It doesn't even have to be on its owner's turn. It's kind of fitting that the only way to get rid of it is having something fight it with Infect. Oh yeah, the keyword fight was properly introduced in this block too. Careful when you fight though, you might have a tragic slip. Honestly, there's not a lot of negative things to say about Morbid as a mechanic. It's an additional effect, kind of like a bonus if you fulfill a specific requirement, and it doesn't even have to be your opponent's creature that has to die. It can be yours too. Plus, the cards that have it range from serviceable to, honestly, amazing. There's also a good variety of cards too. I have to give this mechanic a 10 out of 10 simply because it is a great mechanic overall. Funny that I was talking about things dying because this next mechanic refuses to allow things you control to die. Undying is identical to an older mechanic, Persist, except instead of -1/-1 counters, you get a +1/+1 counter. This only happens as long as the undying creature has no +1/+1 counters on it when it died. I find it funny that before the first Modern Horizon set, Young Wolf was just a bulk common. Nowadays, it's a must include in all modern Yawgmoth decks. Then again, if you're looking for something a little bit more dangerous, I would highly recommend Dead Machias. He's perfect for decks that don't run humans because it gives all other non-humans you control undying. It's wildly powerful as a commander and prevents things you control from staying dead. That being said, it's kind of hard to interact with, but it also has a unique downside to it as well. See, the Undying will only trigger if that creature doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it. If you find a way to put a +1/+1 counter on a Undying creature your opponent controls before it dies, it won't come back. But honestly, why would you do that? I feel like I'm just making excuses at this point. It gets a 9 out of 10 because it can be interacted with, but it's really hard to stop it. When I was doing research on this block, I stumbled upon a mechanic I honestly forgot about. Fateful Hour is very similar to Morbid, except the thing that triggers it is you, your life total specifically. See, you have to be on death's door in order for it to trigger. Like, you have to be at 5 or less life. Now, that might seem like you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, but there are a few cards that take that into consideration. Courageous Resolve, for example, draws you a card and protects a creature you control from your opponents, but if you have 5 or less life, you can literally stop your opponents from winning the game. You might even be able to turn the tide. Now, Faith's Shield It just targets one permanent you control, but if you have Fateful Hour, it overloads it. Yeah, that's not good enough though. On the competitive side of Magic, life is used more like a resource like land. However, you don't want to get within lightning bolt range too often. Building a deck around this one mechanic is just asking for trouble, and not in a fun way. Plus, there honestly aren't enough cards to make up for that. It's not a great mechanic, so I'm just going to give it a 4. That last mechanic made me kind of depressed, so thankfully we have a miracle for this last entry. Mechanically speaking, Miracle is complicated. It's an alternative casting cost for spells, but it's only for the first card you drew this turn. Like, if you draw a Miracle card, you have to cast it right then and there if it is the first card you drew this turn. The actual cost of Miracle is what makes it so powerful. Temporal Mastery costs 7 mana normally, but you could turn it into a Time Walk if it is the first card you drew that turn. Like, there isn't even a powerful card to reference for Terminus, which can cost 1 mana and get rid of every creature on the battlefield. It's not very often that entire decks are named after a single mechanic. Miracle is one of those rare instances. There are legendary legacy decks that are referred to as Miracle decks, even though sometimes Terminus is the only card with that mechanic in the deck. If you don't draw them, though, they can be really pricey to cast. It's weird to say it like this, but just because of how much of a discount Miracle provides, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Anyway, that's all the mechanics from the original Innistrad block. Do you have any fun memories from the set? Let me know down below. Thanks for. Wait, what's that noise? Oh. Oh no. No, 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 nope.